told his friends, "I doubt this joke of a marriage will survive another year. She's nowhere near my level." They laughed, proud of him. I smiled and said, "Why wait a year? Let's end it today." Then I walked out. That night, his best friend sent a message that made my breath catch. "I doubt this joke of a marriage will survive another year. She's nowhere near my level anymore." Dominic's voice carried clearly through the French doors to the patio where I stood frozen with the tray of steaks I'd been bringing out for his Thursday night gathering. Through the glass, I could see Nathan, Trevor, and Marcus raising their glasses in approval, their laughter sharp and congratulatory. They were sitting around my outdoor furniture, drinking wine from my collection, eating food I'd prepared in the backyard of the house I'd paid for, toasting my husband's declaration that I was beneath him. Nathan stood and clapped Dominic on the back, saying something about how my husband deserved someone who appreciated what he brought to the relationship, someone on his level who understood the challenges of being married to a visionary. I stood there with that tray of ribeyes growing cold, every cell screaming while I watched this performance in the space I had designed and paid for. 30 seconds I remained motionless behind the pillar, watching my husband accept congratulations for planning to abandon me while his friends validated every toxic thought he'd been nursing. Trevor pulled another bottle from the wine fridge, the Chateau Margaux I'd saved for our anniversary next month, refilling glasses with careless entitlement. Marcus had his feet on the Italian ottoman I'd ordered last spring, his loafers marking the cream fabric. Nathan leaned forward and asked how long Dominic had felt this way, and I watched my husband swirl wine with motions learned from YouTube rather than experience. "Ever since Ruby landed Morrison Industries," Dominic said with rehearsed tone, "she acts like she saved the company single-handedly. Her ego is unbearable." The Morrison account I'd pitched alone while Dominic golfed in Palm Springs. The account requiring 17 meetings, 3 redesigns, complete restructuring of our services, the account generating 40% of our revenue and leading 3 Fortune 500 companies to sign with us. Marcus raised his glass and declared, never having read a financial report, that Dominic built this company from nothing and Ruby just got lucky with good quarters. I watched Dominic nod, accepting this revision as fact, as if he hadn't been unemployed when we met. As if I hadn't been running successful freelance operations I transformed into an agency while he pursued catastrophic failures. The crypto platform losing $60,000, the meal kit service never launching, the meditation app unable to compete with free alternatives. Each failure ate savings I'd built while Dominic promised the next idea would succeed. Trevor grabbed another bottle and said Dominic needed someone who appreciated what he brought. Someone understanding that being visionary wasn't about daily grunt work, but big-picture thinking. Being a visionary, exactly what Dominic called himself at dinner parties while I handled actual vision. Growing our company from home office to something real. He'd corner people pontificating about disrupting industries while I closed deals keeping lights on, managed staff he claimed to lead, answered panicked midnight client calls. He'd lecture about leadership philosophy while I actually led and strategized and succeeded. Dominic continued with wounded tone, saying Ruby had changed. She used to support his dreams. Now she throws numbers at him, revenue this, profit margins that. She doesn't understand business is more than spreadsheets. Nathan laughed across the patio I'd designed, saying Ruby sounded like typical corporate drone with no vision, just execution. Just execution. Those words hit like blows, because that execution had taken us from spare bedroom to downtown suite with 23 employees. That execution meant Dominic drove his BMW, wore Tom Ford suits, played country club golf twice weekly, hosted Thursday gatherings discussing how far beneath him I'd fallen. My phone buzzed, Sarah texting that Morrison Industries loved our proposal, ready to sign expansion tomorrow. Sick irony having our biggest meeting tomorrow while my husband told friends our marriage was a joke. Dominic poured his 4th glass, saying he'd documented everything, every decision Ruby made without consulting him. Every time she undermined his authority, his lawyer said strong case for taking half the company, possibly more. His lawyer, Derek Polson, the man Dominic called just a racquetball partner, they'd been meeting secretly to divide assets I built while I was building them. Trevor raised his glass approvingly. Smart getting ducks in a row before she knows what's coming. Dominic assured them Ruby wouldn't see it. She thought herself intelligent with presentations and contracts, but had no understanding of the real game. The real game where he planned destroying everything I built while sleeping in my bed, eating at my table, living off success he resented. I gripped the tray, knuckles white, watching 4 men who'd eaten at my table dozens of times, celebrated holidays in my home, brought wives to parties I hosted, all believing I was beneath their friend despite overwhelming evidence whose level was higher. Thursday gatherings suddenly made sense. Not poker, but planning meetings for my systematic humiliation. Every week while I worked late or traveled, they reinforced Dominic's delusions, fed his ego, constructed narratives where he was victim of my success. I pushed open French doors with the tray. 4 heads snapped toward me simultaneously, laughter dying instantly. Dominic's tumbler stopped halfway to lips, amber liquid catching patio lights I'd strung last summer. Silence so complete, I heard our neighbor's pool filter, distant traffic. Ruby. Dominic's voice cracked on my name, transforming from confident storyteller to caught teenager, face-paling as he calculated what I'd overheard. We were just, he started, but I interrupted. Why wait a year? I said, setting the tray down with deliberate movements, voice carrying the measured tone I used terminating vendor contracts. Let's end it today. I wouldn't want you enduring 12 more months married to someone beneath your level. Nathan went white, blood draining from his face. Trevor found his phone screen fascinating. Marcus stepped backward, nearly knocking the citronella candle over. But Dominic just stared, mouth open, no words coming for perhaps the first time ever. I turned and walked back through those doors, leaving them frozen guilty, footsteps echoing through the house I'd bought as I headed for our bedroom. Behind me, frantic whispers, chairs scraping concrete, panic of men caught conspiring. The closet held my Samsonite luggage, gift I'd bought after closing our first $1 million contract, and I laid the largest suitcase open on our bed. Hands moved with surgical precision, folding blazers worn to meetings Dominic never attended, packing jewelry I'd purchased after each milestone because my husband never acknowledged achievements, gathering designer bags representing bonuses Dominic claimed were our success while contributing nothing. From the bathroom, I collected skincare products, expensive serums I'd invested in because self-care was something I could control while managing business and marriage to someone resenting my success. Medicine cabinet held prescriptions, vitamins, sleeping pills needed increasingly as Dominic's Thursday gatherings grew longer and louder. Multiple footsteps came upstairs, hesitant like children approaching disappointed parents, unsure if they'd face rage or indifference. Ruby, please, can we talk? Dominic appeared in the doorway, hair disheveled from running hands through it, Nathan hovering behind with guilt mixed with relief. There's nothing to discuss, I said, zipping my toiletry bag. You've made your position clear. I'm beneath you. Our marriage is a joke. You've been meeting Derek Polson about divorce for months. What exactly would you like to discuss? Color drained from Dominic's face at Derek's mention, stammering how I knew about his lawyer. I pulled my laptop bag containing every password, client contact, intellectual property I'd developed and said I knew about his lawyer the same way I knew about the separate bank account opened in January, the same way I knew he'd been telling investors I was emotionally unstable, actively hurting the company with ego and control needs. I knew everything because someone finally developed conscience to warn me. Nathan stepped into view, and something about his expression made everything click. It was you! I said, looking at Nathan while Dominic spun around. You sent that. Anonymous message an hour ago telling me to check what was said at Thursday meetings, telling me I needed knowing what he really said about me. Dominic's face, contorted with rage, never directed at anyone but me, practically shouting, asking Nathan how he could warn me. Nathan straightened shoulders and for the first time looked like actual adult rather than overgrown fraternity brother. I've been sending her screenshots 3 weeks, Dom, Nathan said quietly but firmly. Every message in our group chat discussing hiding assets. Every discussion about what you called Project Gaslight. Every time you bragged taking half everything Ruby built while painting her as villain. Project Gaslight, I repeated, laughing without humor. You actually named it like covert military operation instead of just husband destroying wife's reputation. Trevor and Marcus crept upstairs, drawn by drama they'd helped create, standing awkwardly like actors forgetting lines. Earlier bravado evaporated facing actual consequences. Thursday gatherings, Nathan continued, voice gaining strength, were never about poker. They were planning sessions where Dom walked us through strategies documenting your supposed instability. Photos of you working late proving marriage neglect. Recordings of conversations out of context making you sound irrational. Systematically building comprehensive case, you were the problem while he was long-suffering husband holding everything together. I folded my last dress, the red one worn to company Christmas party where Dominic gave elaborate speech about partnership and shared success, knowing he'd contributed nothing to quarterly numbers, and faced them all, these men who'd eaten at my table, whose birthdays I'd remembered, whose wives I'd comforted through relationship problems, asking what exactly they'd thought justified participating in destroying someone simply for being successful. Silence filled the bedroom, heavy and suffocating. Dominic's hands clenching and unclenching while his jaw worked, searching desperately for words that might salvage this. But we both knew no such words existed because you couldn't unsay what I'd heard, couldn't undo 3 months of documented planning for my destruction, couldn't take back she's nowhere near my level when evidence of whose level was higher stood all around us in the house I'd purchased with money I'd earned. I closed the suitcase and wheeled it toward the door. They stepped back like I was radioactive, and I walked past wedding photos on the wall, each frame a monument to promises meaning nothing to the man I'd married. The drive to downtown Marriott seemed both seconds and hours, and I checked into Executive Suite 23rd floor using emergency credit card. Dominic didn't know existed, funded by bonuses I'd never mentioned because I'd learned financial independence was oxygen in suffocating marriages. My phone vibrated continuously with messages from Dominic progressing through predictable stages. First, anger demanding immediate return home, then manipulation insisting I'd misunderstood everything, false apologies claiming he hadn't meant it that way, finally threats about destroying our company, investors pulling out if they heard about separation. I stood under hotel shower until water ran cold, skin pruned, eyes swollen from crying, letting myself finally feel the devastating weight of 12 years building life with someone who'd been secretly documenting evidence for my destruction, gathering ammunition for war I hadn't known we were fighting. 9 that evening, I called Patricia Winters, best divorce attorney in the city. She answered second ring, saying she'd expected hearing from me because Nathan Blackstone had already sent comprehensive overview of the situation, prepared providing sworn testimony about Dominic's financial manipulation and conspiracy manufacturing evidence of my instability. We scheduled 8 the next morning, and I spent 3 hours organizing laptop files, creating detailed folders documenting Dominic's failed ventures, costing $60,000 in cryptocurrency, $40,000 in meal kit service never launching, $30,000 in meditation app going nowhere, alongside folders containing every contract I'd personally negotiated, every client I'd independently acquired, every late night I'd worked while Dominic's office remained dark. Midnight, someone knocked on my door. Through peephole, I saw Nathan holding 3 banker's boxes, looking smaller and more ashamed than ever, usual swagger completely gone. He set boxes on my coffee table without speaking, stood awkwardly with hands in pockets like teenager caught shoplifting. I opened the first box, found manila folders labeled in Dominic's handwriting, financial discrepancies, emotional instability evidence, asset documentation. Inside were printed emails I'd sent about normal business operations Dominic had annotated with twisted interpretations, messages about working late marked as marital abandonment proof, contract review requests characterized as controlling behavior. He'd systematically twisted every interaction into evidence for narrative existing only in his deluded mind. This goes back to January, I said, holding folder dated 5 months earlier. He's been planning this since year's beginning. Nathan nodded miserably, unable meeting my eyes, explaining it started after I'd landed Samsung contract. Before that deal, Dominic could pretend being my equal, but that massive contract made brutally clear who really ran our company, and his ego couldn't handle truth. Second box contained something worse. Photographs of me at desk 10 at night taken through office window like surveillance photos. Screenshots of LinkedIn posts about company growth. Dominic highlighted with comments about narcissistic attention needs. Even photos from my sister's birthday dinner, where my 2 wine glasses were marked as developing drinking problem evidence. Third box was devastating. Financial records showing Dominic setting up shadow company, registering Delaware LLC, approaching our clients about new venture he'd launch soon. Name on paperwork was Morrison Strategic Solutions. Deliberately similar to our company Morrison Digital Innovations, close enough confusing clients, but different enough claiming coincidence if confronted. My phone buzzed with emergency text from Sarah, saying Dominic just sent company-wide email claiming I was having mental health crisis. He was taking temporary control of all operations, and I immediately called Patricia, who said she'd file emergency injunction right then, preventing him accessing company accounts or making operational decisions without board approval. Morning of board meeting. I dressed in sharpest black suit, the one worn closing Samsung deal, arrived at Office 6, finding Nathan already arranging printed evidence with methodical precision. We created documentation stations around conference room, financial records one end showing every contract I'd closed while Dominic's column remained empty white space, client testimonials another end. Project Gaslight documents displayed prominently where Dominic would face his own words. Exactly 10. Dominic walked in wearing Tom Ford suit I'd bought our 10th anniversary. Paused, seeing Nathan beside me instead of with him, seeing Patricia's presence signaling legal matter, seeing board members' serious expressions. He tried beginning prepared speech about wife's emotional state, but Margaret Chin cut him immediately, saying board reviewed all documentation. His claims appeared not just unfounded, but deliberately fabricated. I clicked first slide showing Dominic's own message about creating erratic behavior pattern even if manufacturing it, watched his face cycle through shock, anger, desperate calculation as carefully constructed lies collapsed. David Akon Quo held up group chat screenshot asking if these were Dominic's words. When Dominic claimed they were taken out of context, Nathan spoke first time saying his only agenda was ensuring truth was known. 3 months he'd watched Dominic planning destroying woman who'd built our company while contributing nothing but obstruction. I advanced through slides showing I'd personally closed 17 major contracts totaling $32 million revenue over 24 months, while Dominic closed exactly 0 contracts despite drawing $400,000 annual salary. And James Harrison from Biggest Client Account leaned forward, stating clearly, his company never once considered Dominic a factor in their decision working with us. Every strategic discussion, campaign adjustment, innovation came entirely from me. They'd merely tolerated Dominic's meeting presence respecting me, but he'd never contributed single valuable insight. My final slide showed registration documents for Morrison Strategic Solutions. His shadow company designed stealing our clients, and I concluded saying board now had all evidence needed making informed decisions about company's future leadership structure. Margaret stood smoothing her skirt, saying we'd reconvene tomorrow morning formalizing transition, suggesting Dominic consider Patricia's buyout offer carefully, more generous than court might determine given this evidence. Meeting dissolved with awkward shuffle of people fleeing uncomfortable scene. Dominic remained seated staring at projection screen where his Project Gaslight words still glowed accusingly. 6 months crawled with painful slowness of recovery. I moved from hotel to furnished apartment downtown, needing space never knowing Dominic's presence. Company stabilized then thrived without his interference, landing 3 new major clients hesitant committing while leadership situation remained uncertain. Nathan proved invaluable as operations director, guilt driving him working harder than anyone, though I still couldn't look at him without remembering 3 months' complicit silence. Morning of divorce finalization arrived gray and drizzling, weather-matching strange melancholy of officially ending something dead for months. I dressed carefully in new suit Dominic never saw, applying makeup emphasizing strength rather than softness. Patricia met me in her building lobby, expression professionally neutral, but hand briefly squeezing my shoulder in support. Conference room smelled of leather and old coffee, windows overlooking city where I'd rebuilt my life. Dominic was already there when we entered, and transformation stopped me mid-step. Man who'd once strutted through life in Tom Ford suits now wore basic Target button-down, wrinkled at elbows, face thinned dramatically, 40 pounds gone along with delusions of grandeur. BMW replaced with decade-old Honda, according to Patricia's investigator, hands shaking holding pen. His attorney, third he'd hired after Derek dropped him and second quit, looked fresh from law school, probably working for fraction of Derek's charges. Young man kept checking notes, clearly overwhelmed by Patricia's presence and evidence mountain we'd compiled. Terms remain as discussed, Patricia said, sliding final settlement across table. Mrs. Morrison retains full ownership Morrison Digital Innovations, all associated intellectual property, the house, all investment accounts. Mr. Morrison receives personal belongings, cryptocurrency wallets from failed ventures, grandfather's watch, no alimony, no future company claims, non-compete clause, stands 5 years within digital marketing industry. Dominic's signature looked like child scrawl, nothing like confident flourish he'd once used on contracts he hadn't earned. He couldn't meet my eyes, staring instead at table where dreams of stealing half my empire had died. When he finally spoke, voice barely whisper, "I know you won't believe me, but I'm sorry." I looked at him, really looked at hollow shell of man who'd once charmed me with false confidence and borrowed dreams. "You're right," I said quietly. "I don't believe you." He signed last page and left without another word, footsteps echoing down hallway like funeral march for person he'd pretended being. 2 weeks later, Forbes journalist arrived at our offices wanting to tell what she called story of the year, and I told her everything. The Thursday night gathering overhearing my husband call our marriage a joke, Nathan's conscience finally awakening after 3 months' complicity, Project Gaslight documents revealing systematic planning destroying my reputation, how my team rallied around me while Dominic's friends abandoned him one by one. Her article ran with headline, How Ruby Morrison Built Digital Empire While Divorcing Dead Weight, reached 2 million readers first week. My inbox flooded with messages from women sharing similar stories, thanking me for showing what survival looked like when transformed into success. And I realized that walking away from someone who diminished me wasn't just about ending a marriage, it was about reclaiming the power I'd always had but had been too busy building his dreams to fully recognize in myself.